Good evening. Welcome to Lesson 32, Victory, the Book of Revelation. Let me begin by saying to you tonight that some of the things I'm going to share with you might be different than what you've heard from other churches or other people, certainly very different than what you would have read in the Left Behind series. And people often ask me why I don't preach a lot on the Book of Revelation. And I will tell you that I'm not sure that the best sermons come from that. It is also pretty clear to me that there are a lot of rigid and transigent beliefs about the Book of Revelation in our society today that I don't agree with. If you grew up in America, and if you probably did, the picture that you came to learn about the Book of Revelation is from dispensational theology. This includes ideas that this book is written for us, not for people in the past, but for us. That John the Revelator was thinking about 2013 when he wrote the book, not the people back then. You might have learned that Revelation is a secret code, and that with careful scrutiny we can learn the details and learn the truth and find the secret answers. We can know when it all will happen. We must watch for the signs. And if we see enough signs, we ought to be ready to sell our homes and wait on a mountaintop or move to a survivalist camp, and the rapture should save us from all the turmoil. Well, the result of this doctrine is a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, a lot of disagreement among the churches, and a real brokenness over what is the mission of the church. Is the mission of the church to love people and teach them about God, or is the mission of the church to scare people? Is the mission of the church to learn and know a secret language? This approach to the book of Revelation, this dispensationalism, came out of the ministry of a fellow named Nelson Darby in the 1850s. What most American Christians believe today about Revelation was not believed by the church prior to 1850. The way that many modern Second Coming theorists interpret the book of Revelation and add things from the book of Daniel was not done prior to 1850. It's kind of an interesting construction of pull a little bit of this scripture, pull a little bit of that scripture, ignore this passage that refers to the second coming in a completely different way, and so now we've built this doctrine that you most of us are familiar with. There is a historic approach to Revelation, and that begins with the concept that Revelation was written for the people that were alive in John's day, that it was written in apocalyptic language, in a bit of a code so that the Christians would understand what John was saying, but he would be able to get his book out past the guards. Because the church was under a great time of persecution when John is writing, and Rome was a horrible taskmaster, and many of the images of horror in the book of Revelation can be directly connected to things that were happening at the hands of the Romans at that time. So really what the traditional view of Revelation teaches is that John wrote this to encourage the people of his day to overcome adversity, not to be fearful in the midst of pain and suffering that was sure to come, and to stay faithful to the end because God was going to be victorious. Now, there are still lots of meaning for us in the book of Revelation if you take the historical or traditional approach instead of kind of the dispensational approach. There's a lot of good lesson material in John's writing to the seven churches, in his encouraging of them and admonishing of them, and we can look at the trouble that the prophet is describing and be thankful that we're not living in a time where the Romans are persecuting the church. But ultimately for us, the wonderful message of the book of Revelation is that God is going to win. There is going to be an overcoming of the painful things of this world. And if we stay faithful and following our Father, then we get to share in that victory. So, what do we do now? Pastor Jeff just erased a lot of what I thought about the book of Revelation. Well, first of all, maybe you'll have a lot of good thoughts today, a lot of good questions in your class today about whether the church should engage in fear, and how much of this is really based on just a couple of scriptures here and there. There's a word in theology called the hapax. It is a doctrine built on one or two scriptures. And there are entire books written about doctrines that you might find one or a half of a scripture to support. When we think about solid doctrine, it is woven all the way through the scripture. You want to talk about love your neighbor, loving God, that is woven from the Old Testament to the New Testament, all the way through from the beginning to the end. Very solid doctrine. Second coming doctrines, a lot of them are very, very speculative. And I encourage you as a Christian person not to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how it's going to happen. Read Hal Lindsey's book from 1971 or two, The Late Great Planet Earth. And it's a perfect example of how somebody sat down and read the book of Revelation and said, here's how it's all going to happen. And he spent all this time touring the country, explaining the signs to people, only to find that he was totally wrong. And we lived through all of those periods, and life goes on, and we still have prophetic people today trying to get us to think that way. Please don't spend your life leaning into speculative theology. Instead, spend your life seeking to be that person of love, seeking to love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, seeking to love your neighbor as yourself. What did Jesus say? On this hangs all the law and the prophets. It's what we're supposed to do. And most of all, remember the words of Jesus, who said, of that day and of that hour knows no man, only the Father in heaven. Thanks for listening. If you have questions about this, I'm glad to talk with you more, have a cup of coffee, chase the discussion. I've got a lot of books I can put into your hands if you want to see where some of this is coming from that I'm telling you about. But thanks for listening. God bless you. And again, it is my dear and great privilege to be your pastor. Thank you.